Hi guys, my name is Emil Vidal Carr and I'm here to talk to you about the 8 stages of the garment making process. So stage 1 is what we call a tech pack, and I guess the best way I'd describe it is it's equivalent to an architectural drawing for a house, but for a garment. It's vital to get one done, especially if you're taking that design all the way through to production. I've been like a recent convert on this, but it kind of cuts out a lot of the misunderstandings that you'll have between yourself, the designer, and the factory or the sample maker that's creating it, because what your vision is on your head, if it's not properly illustrated in a format that factories can understand, it's just going to end up in heaps of problems. And this process is already fraught with areas where there can be a lot of misunderstanding. So yeah, definitely get a tech pack made, whether it's a simple tech pack, be it black and white, or a more complex tech pack where it's full color and then it's got a full graded size chart. So stage 2 is what we call the fabric sourcing process. This can either be done by yourself or by the factory or the sample maker. I generally prefer that customers at least have a go at doing the fabric sourcing yourselves, because at the end of the day, it's your baby. What you might go out and find might be completely different to what was in your head initially. Start with local retailers that sell fabrics just to get an idea of the characteristics and the prices, and then start looking further afield to wholesalers, wholesale agents, fabric trade shows. And then if you're really, stuck, then you move on to hiring someone to do your fabric sourcing, which, we can do for you. One of the challenges you might come across when doing your fabric sourcing is that you may find a fabric that you love, but the mill that makes it, they might have a minimum of 300 meters, which isn't any good to you. So if that happens, then you might need to make a compromise. But yeah, good luck with your fabric sourcing process. So stage 3 is having an understanding of the sizing that you want your samples to be made from, or made within the certain constraints. If you were to go into Topshop, ASOS or Zara, a size 8 or a medium would fit completely different. And the reason for that is there is no such thing as a standard size anymore. Each brand has the right to create what they feel is their interpretation of a small, medium, and large, 8, 10, and 12. Zara, for example, they're a Spanish-owned brand, so their kind of ethos or message would be that Spanish women are smaller than their equivalent UK women. So that's why Zara garments always come up smaller. And that's generally the same for any Spanish brand that's out there. When you want to get your samples made, it's advisable that you have a reference garment that the factory can use it as a template. Well, you would say that this is your medium, even though the reference sample might be classified as a large or a small. So to sum up, you have the right to create your own rules for your own sizing. Stage 4 is the pattern making process. And a lot of people get confused thinking that the pattern is to do with the print or the design. No, the making of the pattern is the jigsaw pieces ultimately that create your concept. So if it's like a t-shirt that I'm wearing now, you've got your front, your back, your sleeve, and then your collar. So that's 4 pattern pieces for a t-shirt style. If you're doing something like a jacket, then that can be anything up to 20 pattern pieces. I've done projects for Alexander McQueen, where I think there was like 34 pattern pieces for one garment. So it can get really intricate, and you always want to make sure that you use a pattern cutter that has experience making the kind of products that you want to make, because then they'll have an understanding as to some of the constraints with fit and fabrics that are involved. And that first pattern will be made in the sizing of your choice. Stage 5 is what we call the Twilight Process, and I guess this is the only optional phase, but it's advisable to do it out of all of the processes. you would create a toile, or it's called a mock-up as well. It's where you make the first version of your design in a cheaper fabric. So let's say you're using a very expensive silk. You may not want to commit to using that silk for the mock-up, so you can use either a polyester satin or like a muslin, just to get that first version made up. And then you can do your fit session and then assess whether or not the design is going in the right direction, what changes you're going to make. And then even at certain stages, certain customers can ditch a concept at toiling stage because it just doesn't sit well with the rest of the collection. So number 6 would be the sample making process. And this is where all your fabrics, all your trims, they're ready, the pattern's been corrected. And that first version is almost it is a representation of how the product is meant to look when it's in the hands of the customer. And later on down the line, that sample you're going to use to do your marketing photography. So there has to be, I guess, as close a match as possible to what you photograph to what the customer gets. There are certain constraints where you might have branded trims that you may not want to order in the thousands for the sampling process, but for the production process, that's when you're ready to order those thousands. I guess the customer also has to sign off on that, and that's sometimes called a gold seal, which is more of an industry term. So if you're working with the likes of Topshops or Zara, they'll use that term as the final rubber stamped approved sample before they go into production. And then also the sample will include any printing, any embroidery, any labels, and so forth. So stage 7, the penultimate stage, is the process of grading. And I guess depending on how you look at it, it can be a rather complex thing to approach or quite a simplistic way, but ultimately grading is the conversion of the master pattern to different sizes ready for production. So if you've done your sample in a medium and then you're doing an XS to XL for production, the grading would be converting the master pattern only to XS, S. You skip the medium, you do the large and the XL. So that's 4 sizes to be graded for production. And then you decide how you're going to split your units across, let's say, if it's 100 units per style. Most cases, I think the smallest and the biggest sizes, they are done the least numbers within production. And then your central kind of size classification, so your mediums, your large and your small, they'll generally be the higher numbers. But that all depends on whether or not you're catering to smaller body shapes or taller body shapes. But as a general rule of thumb, the size that's in the middle is what you tend to do the most of for production. And then I guess one tip to add as well, when it comes to grading, factoring in the bust, the waist and the hip, they generally go up in increments of 5 or 6 centimeters. So that's, I guess, dependent upon the fabric you use, it's dependent upon the garment that you're making. And ultimately it's down to your discretion. It is very much a trial and error process. So if you can afford to make mock-ups or samples of each of the grades and each size before you go to production, that would really help, just so you don't get any nasty surprises. Naturally, it is more costly, but I guess it could save you a lot more money in the long run. So stage 8, the final stage, is the production. And this is where you do your bulk order ready to ship to your customer. What I advise that you do is, whilst you're doing your production stage, you're doing your marketing on social media and all your platforms, building up hype for your brand, because generally production takes a minimum of about 6 weeks. Don't take on any factory that can kind of tell you that they'll do it within or less than 6 weeks, because they're either not busy or 9 out of 10 times they're just going to end up late. So factor in 6 to 8 weeks for your production delivery, because you need that 2-week buffer in case there's any QC issues, as sometimes there are, regardless of how good the factory is. And then sometimes there's late delivery times in terms of shipping, depending on where you are. So yeah, the production stage is where you can get excited. What we do is we offer a service where we do social media photography and videos for customers whilst production is going on, just so you can tell the story to your customers, because it builds trust in your brand. It solidifies the message that your products are being made in the UK especially, and it shows that you have a hand and a care in the process as a whole. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video, the 8 stages of the manufacturing process. Feel free to get in touch with me personally. I do a lot of workshops with startup and established designers, but I look forward to seeing you on the next video.